It was a pretty historic election for Democrats here in this area. Why did we know what we saw. Why did that happen?
In DuPage specifically?
In the State House, in the suburbs.
So the rest of the nation pretty much did not see a blue wave. We really saw a blue wave here in Illinois. And I mean, there's a number of reasons for it. First of all, the top of the ticket was very weak. And obviously we had a divided Republican Party. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But, you know, Rauner was an anchor at the top of the ticket, just dragging everybody down. There was no enthusiasm to come out and vote. And then specifically in DuPage, you've had a lot of inroads by Democrats in DuPage County, and a lot of them are moving here. You have a demographic shift that's been happening in two ways. One, we've lost, seriously, a population of 1.3 million people since 2000. About 1 million of those folks, when you look at voter rolls and things like that, are Republicans. So Republicans have left the state far more than Democrats. Number two is you've had a demographic shift out of the city of Chicago into DuPage County. You can see this anecdotally, but you definitely know it in the voting patterns, and it's making a difference. Democrats control every statewide constitutional office. They have supermajorities in both chambers. What's the future of the Republican Party in Illinois? Well, that is really the question of the hour, right? We still think that the only way that Illinois can fiscally get back on track is through the conservative reform policies that I've advocated for and others down in Springfield. There's no way to pay off this massive amount of pension debt, massive amounts of other debt, and then still have people leaving the state. You can't do that without conservative reform, which means lower taxes, less government, less spending. And so we think our vision for Illinois still will resonate. We just have to have a better way of getting it out and connecting dots for people. Yeah. Truly, it's a challenge, though. A question about your approach to this general election. Yes. All 8 Democrats who ran against J.B. Pritzker in the primary came around to eventually fully endorse and even some campaign with him and for him. You probably saw the Democratic press releases that gloated every time you refused to endorse Bruce Rauner for re-election. There are still some people that you yourself may hold a grudge against some of that, the primary bad blood that happened there, but do you think you hold any responsibility in not helping the party reunify before the general election? You know, it was never my job to reunify the party. It was Governor Rauner's job to reunify the party. And he did not reach out to conservatives, nor did his surrogates reach out to conservatives in any way. In fact, they didn't even really help conservatives get elected in down ballot races. They spent a lot of their effort and time. Actually, I don't actually know what the Republican Party did, because I think they were largely absent from some of the state rep and state senate districts races that you had. In fact, you put in sort of this co-leadership coalition in April, and then no activity from them. Literally no activity. Anything that was happening in the Republican Party was happening only at the local level. There was no overarching strategy. They never brought me in. Tim Schneider never said, what are your ideas about connecting with the voters? There was no reach. You backed Mark Shaw, and they brought Mark Shaw in at the party level. Yeah, but Mark Shaw was supposed to win that outright, and that's inside baseball. It's a difficult thing to do, but essentially Mark Shaw didn't. I guess the point is there were some concessions. No, there was actually no concessions. And then there was no work put forward. Any money that was sent was only there to really help Rauner get reelected, and didn't really fall down ballot. So is the path to victory then farther rightward for Illinois GOP, or is it more to the, you mentioned already that so many voters that were Republicans are leaving. Does that mean that the elected officials that are Republicans need to move to the middle to follow the voters, or what do they do? See, I don't think so, because I think policy good policy is good if you're a Democrat, Republican, or Independent. Let's face it, it doesn't matter what political party you ascribe to. Everybody's getting punished by property taxes. Everybody has less money in their pocket from the 32% permanent tax increase. What's happened with the Republican Party is we've destroyed our brand. We don't have a brand. People don't know what we stand for. And I think if they understood that every single Democrat in the state legislature has a failing grade when business rates their votes. They are not pro-business. They're not. And you can't bring back Illinois unless you're pro-business. Well, Republicans are pro-business. We just have to coalesce around the things that we agree on. And we certainly agree on lower taxes, less government, less spending. There is an undeniable Republican brand that is very palpable here in the suburbs, though, and that is the brand of President Donald Trump.
I want to read you something that Sheriff Mark Curran said, who's from the suburbs here. He said the GOP needs to replace Trump at the top of the ticket because he's hanging around the necks of Republicans and he's an embarrassment, especially as the suburbs become more and more ethnic and more brown. He says this is a big problem here. And if Trump is the future of our party, the Republicans, put a fork in it. He said, we're done. Jim Edgar also just told the State General Register on Wednesday, if you want to win statewide election in Illinois, I don't think going to the right is the right strategy.
Well, Jim Edgar has always held that opinion. Look, when I contacted Jim Edgar in the primary to get his thoughts about my challenge, and I brought up Governor Rauner's taxpayer funding of abortion, he said, I would have signed that bill. So Jim Edgar doesn't represent the core conservative base that is the Republican Party, and Rauner lost his base.
So that's a state issue, but to the issue of President Trump, is embracing him in Illinois a mistake?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So you need to explain how Congressman Bost won by 20 points.
That's not in the Chicago suburbs. That's not in your backyard. That's
My
way
point
downstate.
is that you may say that Trump is a detriment, and if you want to level it up to like the entire GOP needs to get rid of Trump, that is a national discussion among the GOP. That is not something you can pin just on the state. He is the president, and he has certainly helped gain seats in the Senate. You can't dismiss that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've got the Illinois suburban voter is disconnected from the larger American populace that largely likes what Donald Trump is doing. And even that includes their southern and central Illinois fellow citizens who like what Trump is doing. You cannot separate the two. And I think what we have to do is we have to better direct their attention as to who's in charge of the fiscal disaster that defines Illinois. 50th in fiscal stability in the state of Illinois. We could not be more of an outlier when it comes to anything financial compared to the rest of the states. We have slow, anemic growth when we should be exploding with all of our natural resources and inherent advantages in terms of transportation, but we're not. Why we are weighed down by one bad budget after another bad budget, all as a result of one-party control. And now we've gone back to one-party control. And we have to just be stronger as Republicans about connecting dots to people, because nobody likes the financial picture that is Illinois. Even Sam Zell, the real estate tycoon, flat out said, Amazon would be foolish, so to speak, to come to the state of Illinois.
He took some scorn for that comment, but
yeah, it doesn't matter. It's the truth, and Amazon's not going to be here. They know better.
Early in this interview, you mentioned that you thought that there was a weak top of the ticket. I wonder if there was a sense of longing.
I thought, no, there was
a weak top. You were the alternative in the primary. You would have been the alternative. Mm-hmm. Are you prepared to say now whether or not you would rule out or consider a run in 2022?
We're not ruling out anything, truthfully. We're actually gathering a lot of data, precinct by precinct, looking at where, because there's this thought that Trump was the biggest effect. He certainly was a headwind to some degree. To what degree, we don't know. We think some of the campaigns could have been better run in many cases. And so we're just evaluating where the electorate is in the state of Illinois and making a decision. I mean, there is a thought maybe we have become the California of the Midwest. I tend to think, though, that Illinoisans are a lot more practical, and that they've been punished for years by these high taxes. And I think that they're willing to hear solutions.
Have you done a diagnosis of your own primary? Was there anything you could have done differently, you think, to win that race?
Well, we could have raised a little bit more money to be up on air, and because we were flipping votes every time. His lies pretty much penetrated.
You really embraced President Trump on the issue of immigration.
Oh,
Do you
yeah,
stand by that decision?
I still stand by that decision, absolutely, 100%. I think we need to protect our borders.
On his issue of birthright citizenship, do you agree with the president there?
Yeah, I'm not a constitutional lawyer at all, so I'm not even delve into that. I have no idea, no opinion on that.
I'm going back to the question though of how far is the path to victory for Illinois Republicans farther to the right or trying to find compromise on that middle ground? And it appears that you're saying the right lane.
But look, I'm a rule of law person, and I still firmly believe that good policy is good policy whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. And that goes for how we handle the least among us, the developmentally disabled. There's good policy there that we could have picked up and that we should agree on. It's how we deal with job creation. It's how we handle our schools. Look, bad schools hurt everybody in that bad school. And Look, I wrote today in a Facebook post, congratulations, Chicago. You just elected your brothers and sisters that are going to bail out your junk bond rated government entities on the backs of the taxpayers statewide and use them as an ATM. And that's really what last night was about.
But we know that Chicago pays more into the state than it gets back. And
No, it's
downstate
about 1 to 1.
gets...
It's about 1 to 1. DuPage County gets about 31 cents back for every dollar. Chicago gets about 1 to 1. But when you look at it, but that's going to accelerate in many ways.
There's a lot less poverty in DuPage. There are a lot less people in DuPage that need social services than there are in Chicago, right?
Go ahead and make that argument all day long, but we have pockets of poverty too. The truth is,
in DuPage County?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely we do. Mm-hmm. I have some school districts in my district that have a large amount of poverty.
You said that the people that voted for J.B. Pritzker were willfully ignorant. That sounds like you're saying, I'm smarter than all of you voters and you're kind of dumb.
No, no, I said that they were willfully uninformed. And that means that they didn't go out and search out the right information for themselves. I didn't call anybody.
Where should they have gone to for that information?
Well, you can just
not the commercials, not the airwaves, but
you can't trust those commercials. They're running commercials. The Democrats are running commercials against state rep candidates, saying that they're going to take away pre-existing conditions coverage and Medicare. Both of them are federal issues.
So you weren't calling voters stupid?
Federal issues. No, and I didn't. I said they're willfully uninformed, because if you're that uninformed as to vote in the Chicago Mafia wholesale. And it wasn't about J.B. Pritzker, by the way. People assume that my entire fight this last 6 months have been about J.B. Pritzker. It hasn't been. I've been very clear about that. The fight is to change the Illinois House and to not give control back to Mike Madigan, who, once he was elected yesterday and he serves 2 more years, will have 50 years in office, 50 continuous years in office. And he'll have, what, 36 years as the speaker.
Longest tenure in American history.
He passed that in 2017 when he was elected. So, I mean, the
sure.
point of the point, I always made clear after the primary that my fight would be in turning the House into a more Republican situation. I was very clear about that, and that's what my Facebook post. I think I think that people don't understand. They wanted apparently divided government at the federal level. They understand that you really needed divided government at the state level.
You don't have that now.
No, you don't. So they own it all.
What are you looking to for J.B. Pritzker? Will this be a test of whether or not progressive economics work? Raising the minimum wage to $15, passing legalized marijuana, sports gambling,
yes, so
these other things.
I hope not. I mean, I hope not that we're
He said he's going to do those things in year 1.
Okay, well, then we will have a race for the border, and you'll see people flee out of the state.
And if the economy takes a turn for the better?
Oh, the economy in the state of Illinois? The only reason the economy in the state of Illinois has even done well in this last year is because the optimism of the Trump election, which he basically said, I'm going to give you tax cuts and regulatory reform, and then following through on that commitment and giving tax cuts and regulatory reform. That's the only reason that you've had an uptick in the economy in the state of Illinois. We've underperformed our potential, clearly underperformed. We have they want to talk about wage growth. We're number 2 from the bottom. The only one worse than us is Connecticut.
Yeah.
We're the 5th largest GDP, 6th most populous state. We have vast amounts of resources, and we can't get our wage growth up. It's because our policies are hurting us.
Would you welcome Governor Rauner back into the Republican Party in Illinois after he leaves office? Do you think there's room for him, his money, his influence in the party still?
I don't think he's interested in that.
What about Todd Ricketts? What do you make of his recent...
I don't know him. I think, it's great. We're happy to have people on home. I think there's a lot of policies that we can agree on as Republicans and to move this state forward. And I actually do want to work with various coalitions of people on the things that we can come together on and agree to do and work to combat the J.B. Pritzker's ideas of higher taxes and,
Yeah. Voters rejected Governor Rauner in this election on Tuesday.
Yes, they soundly rejected him, obviously.
And he's on his way out. He said in his concession speech that he still is interested and forever interested in Illinois, making it a better place, but through bipartisanship. So if there was a conversation to be had between you and him.
Maybe he's going to set up some sort of, Jim Edgar public policy school symposium and train new legislators. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he means by that. We'll have to see, won't we?
All right. Well, for you, what would that mean? What does the next 2 years look like?
It's up to him to define those
I know.
terms.
I'm
It's not up
shifting
to
from
me.
him to you.
No, I'm not going to.
Do you see yourself as a leader of the Republican Party in Illinois?
Well, I would certainly think that people still value my opinion on quite a few things. I've already been asked to speak at various locations about what's happening in the Illinois GOP in the future. And so I'll be connecting dots with voters and Republicans. I see myself doing that in some capacity, but I don't know exactly how that's going to look.
All right. Any predictions about what we can see, what we can expect from Springfield, given that it's under complete Democratic control for the next 2 years?
Well, I would hope what we see is serious pension reform going forward. New hires in a 401k, a constitutional amendment to amend pension benefits going forward.
These are things you want.
Yes, and you know what though, because they're necessary. You cannot continue to pay advance the debt and expect people are going to stay here and take it. You are creating another pressure for a tax increase. As soon as you do that next tax increase, you are going to lose even more people and more business and exacerbate the problem. The last thing I want to see Springfield do is raise taxes. It's the last thing they can do on people. Here's my other prediction, though. You will see your property taxes increase year after year after year.
J.B. Pritzker says he's going to lower them.
Oh, really? Well, that would be interesting. I don't know how he's going to do it when he just got backed by all the public sector unions who rely on high property taxes for their overspending at the local level. And so if he's going to do that, that'll be interesting. I'd like to watch him do that.
And AFSCME's been holding out for a contract. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, that's a $3 billion debt to the state that's going to accumulate as well.
Given your knowledge of Springfield, of the House.
I have no confidence in anybody.
Okay. But who do you think, in the event that, say, J.B. Pritzker says he opposes gerrymandering, he says he opposes raising property taxes. These are two things that if you take him at his word, it looks like maybe you don't, but if you take him at his word, who would have the upper hand in that fight, in that conflict, where interests diverge between the governor-elect Pritzker and House Speaker Michael Madigan?
I'm going to bet you 10-1 Mike Madigan gets everything he wants and more.
All right. Well, thanks for sitting down. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.